Hello, I'm Geraldine and these are my novel opinions. This is going to be my roundup for February 2026. Despite it being a short month, I got through 6 books, although admittedly 2 of them were very short and none of them were particularly long. So with no further ado, let's get straight into it. The first book I read was She's a Lamb by Meredith Hambrock. Now this is the story of a woman who's an actress, and she's got a reasonable career doing adverts and things like that. She's not famous or anything, but she could quite happily make a living that way. But she thinks that what she's destined for is a huge career in musical theatre. Unfortunately, she is completely delusional about her singing skills. And also she's blind to certain things that are going on around her as well. All of this is told in the first person through the protagonist's eyes, so you have to do a little bit of reading between the lines to get a grip of what's actually going on. Sometimes that's a little bit clunky, but most of the time it works very well. And I thought it was very well done overall. I was a little bit disappointed that the ending didn't surprise me. I thought we were heading for a little bit of a surprising ending, but it was still a very satisfying one anyway. Yes, I can recommend that. The next book I read was Still Life by Sarah Winman. This has been sitting on my Kindle for ages, so I was very pleased to get round to it at last. It's the story of a group of people who are a bit of a found family, and we follow them from the end of the Second World War to the 1970s. It's split up into, I don't know whether to call them chapters or parts, long chapters, short parts, but they're separated by time. And the first part I absolutely adored. I thought it was wonderful. And I assumed the rest of the book was going to be like this. But when I got on to the second part, it was almost as if the book had a completely different author. The feeling and the vibe changed completely, and it became a little bit of a kind of family saga, potboiler, soap opera type thing, which really disappointed me at first. But as I moved through the book, although we kept this vibe, I came to love the characters completely, and the action moves to Florence. And by the end, I absolutely adored it. There are a few touches of magical realism in it which don't entirely fit, but didn't really spoil it at all. And yes, I was very glad that I persevered with it because it was a really lovely book. One thing to note though is that there are no speech marks. I know that seems to be very common these days, but in a way I think for this book it's a good thing because it's made up of almost entirely speech. There's very little narrative. Hello Lucia, what are you up to? Anyway, just be aware if you're one of those people who doesn't like missing speech marks. The third book for February was Hunger by Choi Jin-Young, translated by Soje. This is the story of a young woman who is so grief-stricken by the death of her boyfriend that she decides to eat his dead body so they can be close and be together forever. This has been around a lot recently. It's become a bit of a cult book, and an awful lot is made of the cannibalism aspect of it. But really, there's not very much of that in the book, although where it is mentioned, it's quite stomach-churning, I have to say. But mostly it's the story of obsessive love against the backdrop of capitalism and the poverty trap. I like the way that in this story, more and more of their story is uncovered as you go along. You really don't realise at the beginning just how much these 2 young people have been through together. So that's quite cleverly done, but overall it didn't really move me hugely. Next I moved on to Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaghy. This is the story of a family who live on a very remote island, almost in the Antarctic, when one day a woman washes ashore and they need to find out who she is and why she's there, because this island isn't the sort of place that you can just wash ashore by accident unless you're actually heading for the island, and they weren't aware of anyone who was heading for them. This story has plenty of messages about the climate crisis, but it's also a thriller as well. The narrative moves from the viewpoint of one character to another, some of them in the first person, some in the third. Now, in the ones where you're in the first person, you're definitely in their heads. It's not that they're telling you a story. That's made abundantly clear. You're in their heads. And quite often when we have this in particularly thrillers, it really annoys me when they're clearly holding something back. If you're in someone's head, they can't hold anything back from you. But in this book, it was clear that they were deliberately holding secrets back from the reader. It didn't annoy me quite as much as it usually does, I have to say, because there was so much else that was going on in this book. But it was still there, which was a little bit of a niggle. But overall, it was very exciting, very atmospheric. You could really feel yourself on this island. And it had a very satisfying ending. Not everyone likes the ending. I read in various reviews that some people were very unhappy with the ending. I don't know what they were complaining about. I thought it was an excellent ending. Very exciting, very poignant messages for our time. And yes, I would recommend it to anyone. The penultimate book for February that I read was Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazzterrica. This book is set in a world where there has been a virus that has killed off an awful lot of animals, but also made them poisonous for humans to eat. So it's become the norm for people to eat humans, and we are breeding them specifically for that purpose. The story follows a man who is a senior manager in a human abattoir, and he's also battling his own grief. From the start, he is quite a morally ambiguous character, because he doesn't eat meat himself, but he does this job because it pays well, which allows him to keep his elderly father in a very fancy nursing home. So is that bravery on his part, doing this job that he abhors, or is it hypocrisy? He could do another job for slightly less pay, and I mean, his father doesn't have to be in that fancy a nursing home. But then as we follow him, he makes other choices, and we have to start making decisions about how we feel about that one way or the other. It's not the most subtle story of capitalism, the wealthy elite, or even the meat industry. But then we don't really expect subtlety from horror, and that's what this book is. It is a literary horror story. But almost everything in this book that we see done to humans, and it goes well beyond just the meat industry, is even today being done to animals. So that's clearly a message that the author wanted to get through. There are a few minor plot points that made me look up when this book was written, and I think it's important to go in knowing that it was written before the pandemic. It certainly is extremely gruesome, but as I say, very realistic for the most part, although with other animals rather than humans. But I did think it was quite good, and I won't say the word enjoy, because it was a little bit sick-making at times. But yes, I'm glad that I read it, and I was certainly very satisfied with the ending. Towards the end of the month, the long list for the International Book Prize came out, and so I reserved as many as I could from the library straight away. The first one to turn up was Women Without Men, I'm going to have to refer to my notes for this, by Shahrnush Parsipur, translated by Faridoun Farrokh. This is set in Iran in 1953, which was the year of the coup, which overthrew the Prime Minister and strengthened the power of the Shah. I should know more about this period of history, or this particular instance in history, because of course the UK had a very large part in this. But this story itself is about several different women who decide to do things their own way rather than the accepted way. There's an awful lot of magical realism in it. There's a woman who decides to plant herself as a tree, another woman who can read minds, and so on and so forth. And anyway, they all end up meeting up and living together in the same house. I think an awful lot of this story went over my head, partly because I don't know the history, and partly I don't know much about Iranian, Persian culture. But for me, although I loved the women, I loved the portrayal of the women, I loved their the magic about them, but the story as a whole never really came together, and I don't think they were ever really without men. So I'm not quite sure what to make of that. As I say, I'm assuming it's a failing on my part, but ultimately I didn't enjoy it hugely. I'm currently on my second book on the International Book-a-Long list. It's called The Nights Are Quiet in Tehran, so it's another book set in Iran. I'm not getting on with it very well at the moment, but I'm only about 20% of the way through, and it's not a very long book, so I think I will persevere. I've got another couple out of the library on the long list, but on, I think it's Wednesday, is it Wednesday? The long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction is announced, and I suspect I might abandon the International Booker for that, because I tend to get more excited by the Women's Prize. So we shall see where that takes us. Anyway, I hope you've had a good month of reading, and I hope you have a good one to come, and I will speak to you soon for the next one. Bye.